The great hall of the Galactic Council was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the slow movement of light across the ceiling. Rows of alien delegates sat in curved seats that rose in wide arcs. Their eyes, whether bright, dull, narrow, or many, all turned toward the center of the hall. There, a large floating image of a blue and white world spun slowly in the air. It was the image of Earth. To most of them, Earth looked small and harmless. Data lines moved beside the image, showing population counts, resource numbers, and records of past wars. Many of the delegates saw only weakness. They saw a world that had fought itself for centuries, a world that was still divided into many nations, a world that did not yet control faster than light travel on its own. To them, humans were late arrivals to the galaxy. A tall, thin delegate with silver skin and dark, glassy eyes raised one hand. His voice was smooth and confident as it echoed through the hall. He spoke about Earth in calm tones, calling it an unstable world with too much emotion and too little unity. He said that if the Council did not bring Earth under control now, humans might one day cause trouble for the stable order of the galaxy. Other voices agreed. Some used more careful words, but the meaning was the same. They believed Earth should be guided, limited, and if needed, forced into a safe position. Only a few softer voices warned that humans were more dangerous than they seemed. Those voices were quiet and soon ignored. When the meeting ended, a decision had been made. The Council would not send a full armada. That would be too open, too loud. Instead, a small coalition fleet would move toward human space. It would attack outer colonies, show overwhelming force, and then present an offer. Earth could keep some control over its home system, but would answer to the Council in all larger matters. To most in the hall, it sounded like a generous plan. The coalition fleet left their days later and slipped into faster-than-light space. The ships were smooth and bright, with long curved hulls and glowing engines. Their weapons were the result of many species and many years of work. On their bridge decks, alien officers spoke calmly. They did not expect much resistance. Far away, near a small yellow star, human ships moved through the dark too, but they were slower and older. They carried workers, families, machines, and supplies to the colonies on the far edge of human space. These colonies were not grand. They were rough places with metal walls, dust-filled airlocks, and long work shifts. People went there to find new chances and new lives. On one such colony, a dusty mining world with a thin atmosphere, Captain Jason Brooks stood in the control center and watched a tired screen flicker on the wall. He had lines under his eyes and short, dark hair that never stayed in place. He had served in the Navy before taking this job. Now he managed both security and transport for the colony. A sensor operator called out to him in a worried voice. Something strange had appeared at the edge of the system. It was large, far larger than any human ship, and it did not match any known human design. At first, they thought it was a sensor glitch. Then the image became clear. A ship unlike any they had ever seen drifted into view, and behind it, more faint shapes moved. Jason felt his mouth go dry. He asked for long-range scans, power readings, any data the small station could gather. The answers came back in short, tense bursts. The unknown ships were heavily armed. Their energy signatures were beyond anything human sensors were used to reading. This was not a lost merchant ship. This was a fleet. He sent a tight beam message toward Earth, marked urgent. In it, he explained what they had seen, attached all scan data, and requested instructions. Then he told his crew to prepare for emergency procedures. They had drills for pirate raids and equipment failures, but nothing for this. Still, they tried. The alien fleet did not wait long. The lead ship moved forward, and a message poured through every human channel at once. It overrode the local system's signals and flashed across all screens. Aliens of many shapes appeared in a single united image, their words translated into flat human speech by a machine. They did not start with a greeting. They gave a demand. The human colony was to shut down all weapons, all defenses, and all long-range communication. Earth, they said, would receive a formal notice soon. The Galactic Council had decided to bring humanity into a new order. Those who obeyed would be allowed to live with limited freedom. Those who resisted would be dealt with quickly. Jason listened in silence, his hands closed into fists at his sides. The speech was calm, almost polite, but it carried cold certainty. These were not explorers reaching out for friendship. These were rulers announcing control. On Earth, the urgent message from the mining colony reached a secure command network buried deep beneath the surface. In a reinforced bunker hidden under an old mountain range, Commander studied the incoming data on a large display. He was a quiet man with close-cropped hair and sharp dark eyes that missed nothing. Around him, officers talked in low voices, trying to match the data with anything in their files. They found nothing. The ship designs were unknown. The energy levels suggested advanced technology well beyond human standards. The speed of the fleet's arrival told them that the aliens had been watching for some time, waiting for the right moment. Did not panic. Instead, he asked for more information. He called for the encrypted logs from outer listening posts, old deep space probes, and corporate stations that often picked up strange signals before anyone else. As streams of data poured in, he contacted analyst Maya Roberts. Maya worked in a secure analysis center that had no windows and no signs on the doors. She had spent her career looking at faint signals, strange patterns, and the quiet traces left by distant ships. Her hair was tied back, and her hands moved quickly over her console as she opened the files from. At first, it seemed like a surprise attack, but the more she read, the less it felt like a simple raid. There were hints of small, odd signals from years before, signals everyone had once dismissed as background noise. There were records of tiny drone-like machines found drifting near the edge of the solar system, written off as debris. There were long gaps in data where certain deep space sensors had gone strangely quiet. Maya slowly built a picture. The aliens had not just arrived. They had been studying humanity for a long time, silently measuring and watching. Now they had moved from watching to acting. She sent her report with a simple conclusion. This was not just an attack on one colony. This was a test of Earth itself. The aliens wanted to know how humans would react. If Earth bowed quickly, the rest of the campaign would be easy. If not, the Council would adjust its plans. Read the report and felt a heavy weight settle on his shoulders. The question was not whether they could fight. It was whether they were ready to show the galaxy who they really were. That same day, in a secure meeting room far above, leaders from several human nations sat around a long table. They came in person or as projected images, but they all had the same tense look in their eyes. Old rivalries and recent disagreements hung in the air like ghosts. At the head of the table, President Oliver Grant rested both hands on the smooth surface and looked at the faces around him. He had aged in the last few years, but his voice was steady. He spoke clearly about the threat. The alien message had gone to many colonies, not just one. The Council had already sent a formal notice to Earth. It offered what it called protection and guidance in exchange for control of trade, space travel, and advanced weapon research. Some of the leaders wanted to consider it. They pointed out that the aliens were far stronger. They said that Earth could not win such a war. If they accepted the terms, perhaps they could protect their people and avoid total destruction. Others were angry at the very idea. They reminded the room of human history, of times when foreign powers had tried to control weaker nations, of how people had suffered when they were told to give up freedom for safety. The debate grew louder, then softer, then loud again. Oliver listened to all of it. When the voices began to circle back on themselves, he raised a hand. The room fell quiet. He did not shout. He simply said that the choice was not between safety and freedom. The Council's offer was an illusion. A species that started with demands and threats would not stop there. Sooner or later, Earth would lose itself. Then he spoke about something few in the room had thought about for years. He spoke about old war protocols. Long ago, after the last great human war, some nations had worked together to build deep underground systems meant only for the worst emergencies. They were not just bunkers. They were factories, shipyards, and command centers buried under oceans and mountains. Some people had called them myths. Others had forgotten them entirely. But they were real, and they were not empty. In the years that followed, small groups of planners and engineers had slowly updated those hidden places. A few leaders had kept the project alive, not out of fear, but out of caution. Humanity had reached into space, and no one knew what would be found there. Now, that old caution was the only shield they had. Oliver explained that they could accept the Council's offer and trust in mercy, or they could prepare to stand. If they chose to stand, the first step was to wake up the systems that had slept in silence for decades. The debate did not end in minutes, but as more reports came in from colonies under attack or blockade, as images of burning docking rings and shattered stations appeared on hidden screens, the path became clear. In the end, the leaders agreed. Not all were eager, and some still feared the future, but the decision was made. Humanity would not bow. In secret, orders moved through encrypted lines and deep fiber channels. Under old mountains, lights flickered on in long halls. Dusty machines hummed to life. Heavy doors that had not moved in years slid open with deep, slow sounds. Engineers and soldiers who had trained for this moment rushed to their stations. In a hidden base under the ocean floor, rows of dark ship hulls rested in flooded docks. Robotic arms began to move around them, checking systems, loading supplies, bringing dormant reactors online. These were not public ships. They were built in secret projects, using experimental designs that many people on the surface did not even know existed. On the moon's dark far side, in buried hangars and tunnels, small fast craft were prepared for launch. They looked rough and had little comfort inside, but they were fast, and they carried weapons that had only ever been tested in empty space. Across the world, teams of analysts, hackers, and intelligence officers started to open files marked for emergency use only. They studied alien transmissions, looked for patterns in their language, their command structure, their timing. Every small clue mattered. Every delay in alien response could offer a chance. In one of those underground rooms, Maya stayed at her station long after most people would have gone to rest. Lines of data moved past her eyes as she searched for weak points. She knew the aliens had better ships and stronger weapons, but she also knew that they believed they understood humans. They believed humans would act in fear, pride, or blind anger. She saw an opportunity in that. If humans could act in a way the aliens did not expect, if they could be calm when they were supposed to panic, clever when they were supposed to break, then maybe they could survive. While all this happened beneath the surface, life on Earth changed in quieter ways. Military units moved at night, using unmarked transports. Satellites shifted in their orbits, then disappeared from open networks as they switched to hidden channels. In cities, people went to work and school, but there was a growing tension in the air. Rumors spread of strange in the sky and odd messages on closed news feeds. The public did not yet know everything. The leaders were not ready to announce that the galaxy had come to their door with chains in its hands. But they knew that the day would come soon when there would be no way to hide it. Far out near the edge of human space, the Coalition fleet finished securing several small colonies. They disabled weapons, shut down ships, and locked local networks under their control. In some places, they destroyed resistance with cold efficiency. In others, they simply took over without firing a shot. To them, it all felt very easy. On the Council's main communication nodes, updates arrived showing their success. Charts and graphs displayed human forces falling back, colonies silenced, and trade routes cut. It looked like proof that their judgment had been correct. Humanity was not ready to stand against them. But some of the alien observers noticed small details that did not fit the smooth pattern. A few colonies had gone dark before the fleet arrived. as if someone had shut down systems on purpose. Some human ships had changed course weeks earlier, heading toward empty regions where deep space hid many secrets. A few older satellites had vanished from tracking records. Those observers sent quiet warnings back to the Council, saying that something was wrong. But their voices were small, and most of the Council was busy celebrating an easy victory. In the underground command center on Earth, watched the same reports, stolen from alien networks by human cyber teams. He saw the colonies fall and felt each loss like a weight on his chest. But he also saw the small gaps his people had created, the secret routes and quiet movements that the aliens had not noticed. He knew that soon the Council would send a final message. They would offer Earth one more chance to surrender. They would expect fear. They would expect hesitation. When that message finally came, it was sent on every channel the aliens could reach. It filled the sky above Earth with invisible waves and poured into receivers across the planet. The voice that spoke was calm, almost gentle. It said that the Council understood human pride and confusion. It said that Earth had seen the first proof of the Council's power. Now, it was time to accept reality. The offer was simple. Earth would retain local control of its atmosphere and surface laws. In return, it would give up any right to build warships beyond its home system. All advanced research in weapons and propulsion would be shared with the Council and placed under its supervision. Trade would be controlled for the safety of the wider galaxy. If Earth refused, the Council would act to remove the threat. The message ended with a request for a clear answer. Earth had a limited time to respond. In the bunker under the mountain, the room was silent as the last words faded from the speakers. Officers looked too, then to Oliver, who had come down to hear the message in person. No one spoke at first. The weight of the moment pressed on them all. Then Oliver nodded once. The choice had already been made in the days before. Now it was time to show it. A small team stepped forward to prepare Earth's reply. There were long speeches they could have written, long defenses of human history and freedom. There were angry words some wanted to send, words of defiance and rage. But in the end, they chose something else. They crafted a short message and sent it through the same channels the Council had used, straight into the heart of the Galactic network. It carried no threats, no insults, and no pleas. It simply said that Earth would not accept limited sovereignty, that humanity would decide its own future, and that any further attack would be answered. There was one more line at the end, written in clear, calm words. "We are not as weak as you think." When the message reached the Council Hall and appeared in the air above them, many delegates laughed at first. To them, it was a small world being brave before the storm. But a few who had watched the shadows and the gaps in the reports felt a cold unease. They could not yet see the hidden bases, the awakening fleets, or the quiet plans forming on Earth, but they could feel a change. The test had begun, and humanity had answered. Far below the skis of Earth, engines warmed in the dark, and human eyes turned toward the stars with a new, hard light. The Galactic Council expected fear after the human reply. They expected long delays, confusion, and quiet attempts to bargain. They did not expect movement, yet movement was already happening across human space and far beyond it. In the hidden command center under the mountain, Commander watched live feeds from multiple regions of space. He saw alien patrols tightening their control over colonies and trade routes. He also saw the quiet launch of human craft from places that officially did not exist. The screens showed dark shapes sliding into the black, their signals masked, their paths carefully planned. Spoke with calm control, giving short orders and updates. Around him, officers moved with focus and restraint. No one shouted. No one panicked. They had trained for chaos, and now that chaos was real, their discipline became strength. In another underground facility, Pilot Cole walked between rows of small fighters. The ships were compact, with sharp lines and reinforced plating. They were not designed for comfort. They were designed for speed and survival. ran a hand along the cold metal of his assigned craft and felt a strange mix of fear and purpose. Nearby, technician Rachel Moore checked the weapon systems with careful eyes. She spoke in short, steady words as she confirmed every setting. This was not a test run or a drill. This was the real edge of war. Knew that once he left the hangar, the sky he returned to might not be the same. In the strategy center, Morgan stood beside a wide tactical table covered in moving lights and shifting markers. Each light meant a ship, a signal, or a possible threat. Her job was to find the thin lines that tied them all together. She looked calm, but her mind moved fast, connecting patterns and predicting responses. Explained to the command team that the aliens relied on central control more than humans did. Their fleets moved like a single body, following strict hierarchical orders. If key points of command could be disrupted, even briefly, the entire force could falter. It was not about destroying everything. It was about confusing them, slowing them, and forcing them to react instead of advance. Listened and nodded. He authorized a limited first strike, not a broad assault but a focused action. The goal was not conquest. The goal was to show the Council that humans would not sit still while their space was taken apart. Far from Earth, near a quiet jump point used by alien supply ships, a small group of human fighters waited in the shadow of an asteroid field. Sat in his cockpit, breathing slow and even, his hands resting light on the controls. The stars outside looked cold and distant, but the calm line in his helmet carried the calm voice of his wing leader. When the signal came, the fighters burst forward like sharp arrows. They locked onto a pair of alien escort vessels and opened fire with controlled bursts. The alien ships turned their weapons, surprised by the sudden attack. Energy flares lit the darkness, and small explosions sparked along the alien hulls. Moved with instinct and training, dodging incoming beams and lining up precise shots, he did not think about glory or anger. He thought only about surviving and completing the mission. Within minutes, the alien escorts were disabled, drifting powerless in space. The human fighters did not linger. They vanished back into the asteroid cover before heavy alien reinforcements could arrive. This was only one strike among many. In other regions, similar attacks unfolded. Small alien outposts lost contact. Supply convoys went missing. Communication relays flickered and died. The coalition fleet began to notice something was wrong. On their command decks, alien officers exchanged uneasy looks. Their sensors showed human craft appearing and disappearing like shadows. No single attack caused great damage, but together they created confusion. Routes that had been safe became risky. Timetables began to slip. Orders were repeated, then questioned. Back on Earth, analyst Maya tracked these changes in real time. She watched alien traffic patterns twist and tangle. The neat lines of control turned into uneven shapes. She pointed out rising stress indicators in alien communications, slight changes in tone, delays in response. These small signs felt like progress. But she also saw something else. The Council was not idle. They were adapting. Larger alien warships began moving into human space, replacing lighter patrol craft. Heavier weapons were deployed along key approach paths. Defensive barriers flared to life around occupied systems. Maya warned that the next phase would not be as easy. The aliens would strike back soon, and they would aim for something that mattered. That prediction proved true when the first major counterattack came. A powerful alien squadron dropped out of faster-than-light travel near a vital human communications hub, a station that linked several inner colonies to Earth. Without that hub, coordination would become far more difficult. The alien ships wasted no time. They opened fire on the station's outer defenses, tearing through shield layers with bright pulses of energy. Human defenders responded at once, but they were outmatched in both size and raw firepower. Inside the station, civilians and crew hurried through narrow halls, trying to reach safe zones. Emergency lights painted the walls in pale red. Alarms rang without pause. In the control room, Security Chief Price kept his voice steady as he guided the defense teams. He knew they could not hold forever, but every minute they delayed, the aliens gave Earth more time to adjust its plans. He sent frequent updates to command, detailing damage reports and enemy positions. Then, a direct hit tore through one side of the station, and the world seemed to shake around him. When the station finally fell silent, the alien fleet moved on, leaving wreckage and drifting debris behind. It was a clear message. The Council had answered human resistance with force. News of the attack spread fast through secure human networks. Faces grew more serious. The sense of calm resolve remained, but grief settled in the background like a heavy fog. Each loss carried a quiet weight, reminding everyone what was at stake. President Oliver addressed the Command Council again. This time his words were not just for those in the room. A controlled broadcast was prepared for the wider public. It did not reveal every secret or hidden base, but it spoke the truth about the threat. He told the people that Earth was under pressure from a powerful external force. He did not use dramatic language. He did not promise easy victory. He spoke of unity, of strength, and of the simple right to choose one's own path. He said that difficult days were coming, but that humanity would face them together. Across cities and towns, people watched the message in silence. Some felt fear, some felt anger, many felt both. But instead of chaos, a strange order began to form. Volunteers stepped forward to help in civil defenses. Factories switched to emergency production. Scientists worked longer hours, pushing old limits aside. It was not loud pride, it was quiet determination. In the deep ocean base, more warships rolled from their construction bays and moved toward hidden launch corridors. Their engines glowed faint blue as they powered up, and crews took their positions with focused care. These ships were heavier than the fighters, built for direct confrontation. Fleet Commander Lewis walked along the central deck of one such cruiser. She spoke calmly with her officers, reviewing plans and contingencies. She knew that soon they would face alien ships far stronger than anything humanity had fought before. Still, she showed no sign of doubt. Her calm steadiness gave confidence to those around her. When the cruiser launched, it rose through the dark water and burst into open space, joining a growing formation of human vessels. To any outside observer, it would have looked like sudden defiance from a species that should have already been afraid. The first major clash between main fleets came near a dim star system where alien forces had set up a heavy control point. Human ships approached in carefully spaced lines, their signals still masked as much as possible. Alien sensors picked them up at the last moment, and alarm protocols flared across their network. Energy fire filled the space between them. Human ships moved in tight coordination, using sharp turns and unexpected angles of attack. Instead of charging straight ahead, they split, circled, and struck from multiple sides. Strategies played out in real time, forcing alien commanders to split their attention again and again. Some human ships took heavy damage. Hulls scorched under alien fire. Shields collapsed in bright flashes, but they did not break formation. They adjusted and held, refusing to give the enemy a clear advantage. On his fighter supported the larger vessels, weaving through the chaos to disable alien weapon nodes and targeting arrays. His breathing stayed slow, even as shockwaves rattled his craft. He could see alien hulls cracking and human ships burning, all in the same field of stars. The battle lasted longer than either side expected. In the end, the alien force, leaving the control point damaged and unstable. It was not a complete victory, but it was proof. Humans could stand against them in open conflict. Back in the council hall, the mood had changed. The laughter that had followed Earth's first message had faded. Reports now spoke of resistance, losses, and unexpected human tactics. The word stubborn began to appear in their discussions, often paired with concern. A few delegates started to argue that the plan needed revision. They suggested heavier force, wider deployment, and faster decisive action before humans grew bolder. Others still insisted that Earth would tire and break under sustained pressure. The debate grew tense and uneasy. Meanwhile, Maya continued her analysis, focusing on the psychological side of the conflict. She noted shifts in alien behavior, signs of discomfort and strain. She realized that the aliens had never faced an enemy that fought this way. Most species either submitted or were quickly crushed. Humans did neither. They adapted, absorbed losses, and returned stronger. She shared this insight with, explaining that what truly unsettled the council was not human firepower, but human refusal to follow expected patterns. This confusion was a weapon in itself. Agreed, he ordered new variations in attack plans. No two strikes would follow the same method. No routine would be allowed to settle. The goal was to keep the enemy guessing, always slightly off balance. As days passed, human resistance grew bolder. More routes were contested. More alien assets were disrupted. The galaxy began to notice. Smaller neutral species watched these developments with careful interest. Rumors spread that the young world called Earth was not fatting quietly. On Earth, people followed brief updates through filtered channels. They saw that their forces were fighting, that the line was holding in places where it should have broken. They grieved for losses, but they also began to believe that survival was possible. Late one night, in a quiet corner of the command center, stood alone and looked at a star map glowing softly on the wall. He thought of the small reply Earth had sent and everything that had followed. He knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not remain silent forever. They would answer again and with greater force. But as he watched the moving lights that represented human ships still active, still resisting, he felt something close to pride. Not loud or reckless, but steady and deep. Humans had begun to show the galaxy that they were not prey. They were not a silent world waiting to be shaped. They were a people choosing their own path, even if that path led through fire and darkness. And far out in space, where the next alien fleet gathered its strength, there were already signs that Earth's awakening fury had been noticed. The shadows of war stretched longer, but so did the resolve of those who refused to kneel. The tension in the void between worlds grew heavier with each passing cycle. Alien forces regrouped and reinforced their positions, while human fleets adjusted their movements and patterns. The space between stars no longer felt empty. It felt watched, measured, and ready to break. In the deep command bunker, studied projections that showed the slow approach of a much larger alien formation. This was not a scattered group of patrol ships or a single hardened point of control. This was a full response, a moving wall of fire and metal designed to crush resistance in one clear blow. He knew that the next engagement would not be small. It would be the kind of battle that would shape how the rest of the galaxy judged humanity. He did not speak loudly when he gathered his officers, but his words carried weight. He told them that holding back was no longer an option. The time for quiet disruption had passed. Now, Earth would meet power with power. In the strategy wing, adjusted the main plan with careful thought. She rewrote attack patterns and layered them with new levels of deception. Human ships would not meet the aliens in a simple line. They would split, hide, reappear, and strike in waves. The goal was not just to destroy, but to overwhelm understanding. She sent updated instructions to every fleet unit. The changes were complex but clear. The crews acknowledged them without hesitation. By now, trust in her planning had grown strong. In the repair hangars of a forward base, stood beside his fighter as automated arms patched scorched plating and replaced damaged components. He watched sparks fly in thin arcs and listened to the steady sound of machinery. The last engagement had been close. He still felt the echo of it in his bones. Nearby, Engineer Carter checked final diagnostics and gave him a small nod. Her face showed tired focus, but also quiet strength. There were no long words between them. They both understood the weight of what was coming. When launch time arrived, the hangar doors opened to the endless black, and one by one the fighters surged forward. Larger cruisers followed, their hulls marked with fresh repairs and new armor layers. The human fleet moved as a unified force, no longer hiding. This was a statement as much as a strategy. Across the engagement zone, alien sensors flared as they detected the assembling human armada. Their commanders adjusted their position, forming a broad defensive arc. Heavy ships took central positions, surrounded by smaller, faster escorts. Bright lines of energy shimmered around their hulls as shields reached full strength. The two forces met in a region of space lit only by distant star glow. In the first moments there was silence. Then the sky erupted. Energy beams crossed the void in blinding streaks. Human and alien weapons collided in brilliant bursts that flared and faded in less than a second. Shockwaves rippled through the darkness, shaking even distant ships. Flew low across the conflict zone, weaving between streams of fire. His every movement was guided by instinct and voice commands in his ear. He targeted weapon arrays and sensor nodes, hitting precise points that had marked as critical. Each successful strike sent a ripple of confusion through the alien formation. On a nearby cruiser directed fire with sharp clarity. Her voice was steady as she called for flanking maneuvers and shield adjustments. When one section of her ship took heavy damage, she did not falter. She shifted power, rerouted systems, and pressed forward. The aliens responded with brutal strength. They unleashed concentrated volleys that tore through two human vessels in rapid succession. Debris scattered like burning rain. Emergency signals flared and went silent. For a brief moment it seemed as if the human line might break. The pressure was immense, the fire almost constant. But then the second phase began. Hidden human craft, silent until this moment, emerged from unexpected vectors. They struck at the rear of the alien formation, targeting communication cores and energy distribution hubs. The timing was perfect. Alien coordination staggered just enough for the main fleet to regroup and push forward. The battle turned into a slow grind of will and endurance, not a quick clash, but a lasting storm where every meter of space was fought over. Crews worked under rising heat and failing systems. Pilots balanced on the edge between discipline and exhaustion. Far away in the council chambers, live tactical feeds showed the unfolding struggle. The clear image of dominance they once expected was nowhere to be seen. Instead, the field was chaotic, contested, and costly. Some delegates began to argue openly. They questioned whether this level of resistance was worth the resources being spent. Others demanded escalation. The unity of their original decision started to fracture under the weight of reality. Back with the human forces, the turning point came when a coordinated strike pierced the shield barrier of one of the primary alien command ships. A focused barrage struck deeply, igniting internal systems and causing cascading failures. The massive vessel lurched off course, its formation breaking apart. Alien escorts scrambled to cover it, but the disruption spread too fast. Command signals flickered, then vanished across several channels. Human forces seized the opening. Ordered in advance, her tone calm but firm. The cruisers pushed through the weakened line, delivering sustained fire with precise coordination. Fighters pressed the advantage, overwhelming defensive clusters. The alien fleet began a controlled withdrawal, turning away from a fight they could no longer dictate. Trails of damaged ships and drifting wreckage marked their retreat path. The silence that followed was heavy and unreal. Human sensors scanned the field for lingering threats as emergency responders moved to recover survivors and stabilize damaged craft. Guided his fighter back toward the carrier, his hands still steady despite the storm he had just flown through. When he landed and stepped out, his legs felt lighter than he expected, as if the gravity itself had shifted. Around him, ground crews moved with quiet efficiency, treating wounds, repairing damage, and recording losses. Faces showed relief mixed with sorrow. Victory had its cost, and everyone felt it. In the command center on Earth, allowed himself a slow breath as final confirmations came in. The human fleet had held. More than that, they had forced the alien armada to retreat. This was no small act. It was a clear message heard across the stars. Maya reviewed the wider communication net and detected immediate changes. Alien traffic slowed. Patrol routes shifted. Some coalition species began pulling support resources back from the front line. Fear, once only a shadow, had begun to take shape. She reported these changes too, noting that the Council would now face growing pressure from its own members. Prolonged conflict would weaken their unity, and unity had always been their greatest strength. On Earth, public announcements were carefully crafted. They did not paint the battle as an easy win. They spoke of sacrifice, of courage, and of the clear fact that the enemy had been pushed back for the first time. The response from the population was quiet but firm. Support grew. Confidence slowly replaced despair. In a small rest area near the hangars, sat with other pilots, drinking water and staring at the floor. No one spoke much. Words felt too small compared to what they had just survived. Still, in the silence, there was shared understanding. They had faced something greater than fear, and they had not folded. Further inside the ship, met with her senior officers to review outcomes and adjust plans. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes carried the weight of every decision she had made. She knew the aliens would not forget this day. And they did not. In the distant council chambers, emergency convocations were called. Strategic models were torn apart and rebuilt. What had started as a simple act of control had become a confrontation that threatened to alter the balance of power across known space. Some voices pushed for complete annihilation as the only safe solution. Others warned that further aggression might strengthen human unity even more. The debate grew sharper, more strained with every passing moment. As the second phase of war slowed, a strange calm settled briefly over the conflict zone. Human patrols secured nearby sectors, while alien forces regrouped farther out. The stars watched as two wills measured each other in uneasy distance. Knew this peace would not last. He stood again before the star map and traced the movement of alien position lines. His thoughts were steady. The fight was far from over, but something important had changed. Humans were no longer responding to control. They were reshaping the terms of engagement. In quiet corners of the galaxy, observers took careful note. Messages traveled through neutral channels, telling stories of a world that refused to fall. Some watched with hope, others with caution, all with attention. And beyond the veil of familiar space, where unknown sectors held deeper silence, new eyes began to turn toward Earth, not as a target, not as property, but as a presence. The brutal retaliation had not yet reached its full force, but its shadow was already long and clear. The message had been delivered not in words but in action. Humanity would not be guided like a child or crushed like an insect. They would stand, even if the galaxy trembled around them. The space between fleets remained quiet for a short time, but the silence felt heavy and false. Both sides used this moment to breathe, repair, and rethink. Human commanders knew the aliens were not finished. They would not accept shame or loss without response. Yet something in the air had shifted. Fear no longer flowed in only one direction. In the deep command center, reviewed reports that spoke of scattered alien regrouping and signs of internal conflict among the coalition. Maya stood beside him, pointing to new data streams that showed disagreement patterns in alien communication. Their once solid structure now showed cracks. Different factions questioned the wisdom of continuing a costly war. Did not celebrate. He understood that even wounded power could be dangerous. He approved further defensive measures and ordered diplomatic channels opened through neutral systems. Humanity was ready for either outcome, peace if it was real, war if it was forced. Far out in contested space, a lone neutral vessel approached the boundary of human-controlled zones. It carried a formal signal marker recognized by both sides. Its presence alone caused tension among nearby patrols, but no one fired. The message it transmitted was clear. The Galactic Council requested direct dialogue. The request surprised no one, but it still carried weight. For the first time, the Council did not speak as a ruler giving commands. It spoke as a body seeking communication. On Earth, President Oliver and the senior command group agreed to send representatives. They did not choose warriors. They chose voices. Was assigned as lead strategist and negotiator. Alongside her stood Envoy Parker, a calm and thoughtful speaker known for steady logic and careful tone. Their transport moved slowly through open space toward the designated neutral point. Human and alien escort ships followed at a respectful distance. No weapons were powered. No sudden moves were made. The cold stars watched as two sides met not as enemies in battle, but as voices seeking to test each other. Inside the council meeting chamber stationed aboard a massive neutral platform, the air felt tense even with advanced environmental systems smoothing the temperature. Alien delegates sat in wide circular positions, their forms varied, strange, and rigid with focus. The sight alone could unnerve many, but walked forward without hesitation. No flags were raised. No symbols of power were displayed. Only the echo of soft steps and quiet machine hum filled the chamber as they took their place. A thin-voiced alien delegate began to speak, explaining that the council acknowledged unexpected resistance and heavy losses. It spoke of stability, risk, and the need for adjusted understanding. There was no apology, but there was no threat either. Listened carefully before responding. Her voice was calm, simple, and clear. She said that humanity had never sought conflict beyond its home. She said that demands made under force could never lead to true order. The only path forward was respect. Added that Earth would not exist as a controlled asset. It would remain a sovereign world. Any relation moving forward must be equal, negotiated, and free of coercion. The words echoed in the chamber where once laughter had followed the idea of human defiance. Now there was only quiet consideration. Alien eyes shifted. Subtle movements passed between delegates as unspoken thoughts traveled through their own silent channels. One asked what humans desired. Did not ask for power, tribute, or territory. She asked for defined boundaries and open trade rooted in choice. She asked for clear communication paths and shared observation agreements. And she asked for recognition that humanity would decide its own future. The council did not answer right away. They requested time to consider the new shape of events. The human envoy returned without hostility or triumph. They carried no illusion that peace would come easily, but the fact alone that such a meeting had occurred marked a turning point. In the days that followed, alien fleets pulled farther back from the edges of human space. Patrols reduced in number. Weapons systems no longer flared along former front lines. The galaxy watched as tension turned into cautious pause. On Earth, people felt the change before official confirmation arrived. The fear that had darkened skies and fueled long nights began to loosen its grip. Factories slowed emergency cycles. Schools resumed normal scheduling. Markets opened doors that had stayed closed too long. Yet no one forgot what had happened. The memory of burned stations and shattered ships remained, but alongside it grew something else. Pride. Not loud or careless, but strong and rooted. Humanity had drawn a line and held it. Addressed his officers and expressed his trust in their continued readiness. He spoke of strength built through unity and awareness. Maya listened and knew that many systems would remain active for years to come. True safety was not something easily won. In one quiet corridor of the orbital command platform, walked past a viewport and looked out at the distant stars. He remembered the first moment chaos lit his cockpit, the first shockwave that rattled his bones. He remembered the calm voice guiding him through fire. He realized how much had changed in such a short time. Nearby, reviewed final fleet status reports. Her responsibilities had not ended, but the pressure had shifted. She allowed herself one quiet moment before returning to duty, aware that history had turned beneath her command. And beyond Earth and its close allies, whispers spread among lesser-known systems. Stories of the humans traveled far, not as myth but as example, a species that did not collapse, a world that did not accept a leash. Within the council, sessions continued in uneasy silence. No loud resolution was announced, no clear victory claimed. The power balance had been altered not through conquest, but through defiance and calm strength. Some delegates could not hide the cold realization that control had failed. When the final response came to Earth, it carried careful words. The Council acknowledged the right of humanity to govern itself and agreed to renegotiate terms under a framework of mutual respect. Border zones were marked, agreements were drafted, observation protocols secured. Read the official statement without speaking for a long time. It was not perfect, it was not full justice, but it marked the first time Earth stood not as a fringe species, but as a recognized voice. As months passed, the open scars of battle faded into memory. Human systems repaired. Trade resumed slowly. Defensive lines transitioned into watchful guardians rather than strained barriers. The name Earth was no longer spoken with casual dismissal in distant halls. It was spoken with hesitation, then with growing awareness. Some alien species reevaluated their approach towards smaller worlds. Some began to understand that strength did not always live in dominance. Others said nothing at all. And the Galactic Council, once so quick to judge, held its silence longer than ever before. No further fleets appeared. No new demands arrived. Only the stillness of a world that had found its voice and kept it firm. In the quiet after conflict, walked through an empty observation room and watched the slow spin of a distant planet on the screen. He knew the path forward would still carry danger, but he also knew humanity had written a message into the stars. They would not vanish quietly. They would not be guided without consent. They would not break simply because power demanded it. Earth had spoken, not in anger alone but in clear resolve, and the galaxy had listened. Not with applause, not with praise, but with silence. A silence born not of dismissal, but of understanding. And in that silence, a new balance began to form, shaped by a world that chose to stand.